Let it begin here. Lexington and Concord, First Battles of the American Revolution, written by Dennis Brindle Fraden, illustrated by Larry Day. April 18th, 1775, 9:30 p.m. Paul Revere, a Boston silversmith and a messenger for the Patriots, receives an urgent request to visit Dr. Joseph Warren's home. Upon Paul's arrival, Dr. Warren assigns him a double mission. He must warn Samuel Adams and John Hancock in Lexington, and then the Patriots in Concord, that the British are coming. How does Dr. Warren know that the British plan to invade Lexington and Concord? General Gage's American wife may have told him. Margaret Kemble Gage, who is from New Jersey, opposes any action that might hurt her native country and may have betrayed her husband's scheme. April 18th, 1775, 10 p.m. Before leaving Boston, Revere stops by a friend's house and tells him, 2 lanterns. The friend hangs 2 lanterns in the steeple of the Old North Church, signaling patriots in the area that the British are leaving Boston by boat before marching inland. Were the British leaving by land, Paul would have ordered 1 lantern placed in the steeple. Paul sets out on his journey from Boston to Lexington. The nearly full moon lights the way as 2 friends row Paul across the Charles River to Charleston. There are the 40-year-old silversmith borrows a fast horse named Brown Beauty and begins the 13-mile ride to Lexington. At Cambridge, 2 British officers suddenly bolt out from behind a huge tree and try to capture Paul. Brown Beauty is too fast for them, though, and Paul is too skilled a rider. He guides the powerful mare onto another road. The 2 officers chase him, but they are soon left far behind. He gallops, warning people along the way that the British are coming. April 19th, 1775, 12 a.m. Paul reaches Lexington and bangs on the door of the house where Hancock and Adams are staying. Guards outside the house tell Paul to stop making so much noise. Noise, yells Paul. You'll have noise enough before long. The regulars are coming out. Regulars, redcoats, and lobsterbacks are what the Americans call the British troops. Adams and Hancock are now awake. Let 'em in, Hancock tells the guards. Thanks to Revere's warning, Adams and Hancock flee by carriage. Meanwhile, a bell is rung to call Lexington's militiamen to arms. 19th, 1775, 1 a.m. Having completed half of his mission, Paul Revere heads for Concord. Along the way, he meets Dr. Samuel Prescott, who is riding home after visiting his fiancée. Prescott offers to help spread the alarm to Concord. This proves to be a stroke of luck. Paul Revere never gets to Concord, for British troops block his way. But Prescott jumps his horse over a stone wall, and to elude the redcoats, the young doctor rides through woods and a swampland and enters Concord by 2 in the morning. Following Dr. Prescott's warning, Concord's alarm is sounded. As the bell tolls, townspeople hide military supplies in barns and homes, and Concord's militiamen prepare to fight. April 19th, 1775, about 5 a.m. The men of Lexington have been waiting more than 4 hours for the redcoats. Finally, near sunrise, a lookout gallops into Lexington shouting, "The lobsterbacks are down the road." Within minutes, about 70 Lexington militiamen gather on Lexington Green, summoned by the town drummer. Instead of uniforms, the men on the field wear farm clothes. Instead of army weapons, they carry old hunting muskets. Some of them are teenagers, like the 19-year-old drummer William Diamond. Others, such as 62-year-old Robert Monroe, are rather old to fight. There are several pairs of fathers and sons. One soldier, Prince Estabrook, is a slave who has been promised his freedom if he helps fight the British. The men are awaiting the British have one thing in common. They are scared, for they are about to face an army from the world's strongest nation. "Stand your ground," the leader of the Lexington militia, Captain John Parker, reportedly tells his men. "Don't fire unless fired upon, but if they mean to have a war, let it begin here." At about 5:20 in the morning, an advance party led by Major John Pitcairn, the officer who boasted that the Americans would run away, approaches Lexington Green. "Disperse, ye rebels, disperse in the name of the king." Pitcairn yells at the Americans, "Lay down your arms." Facing the guns of several hundred redcoats, Captain Parker decides to back down. He tells his men to go home but to remain armed. Most of the men start walking away. A few don't. Captain Parker's cousin, Jonas Parker, a grandfather who has vowed never to flee from the British, stands his ground. So does 62-year-old Robert Monroe. Suddenly, a shot rings out, from which side is unknown. Moments later, the redcoats let loose a torrent of gunfire. Robert Monroe is shot to death where he stands. Jonas Parker is wounded, but true to his vow, fires his musket from the ground until killed by a bayonet thrust. Jonathan Harrington, walking home, is shot near his doorstep. He crawls a few yards and dies in front of his horrified wife and son. The Battle of Lexington lasts just 10 minutes. In all, 8 Americans die and 10 are wounded in the first battle of the Revolutionary War. Several Americans have returned enemy fire, wounding Major Pitcairn in the finger and another British soldier in the leg. Following the battle, the entire British force meets up and heads to Concord, 5 miles to the west. They expect that most of the Americans will run away there too. April 19th, 1775, 7 a.m. 19 minutes after the Lexington battle, Lieutenant Colonel Francis Smith leads his full force of 700 redcoats into Concord. There, the several hundred troops commanded by 65-year-old Colonel James Barrett are as terrified as the Lexington men had been. 1, 2, then 3 hours pass. The Americans only stand and watch as the sea of redcoats takes over their town, seizing weapons and gunpowder. April 19th, 1775, about 10 a.m. A cloud of smoke from fires the British have set rises over Concord. The smoke above their town stirs something in the Americans' hearts. "Will you let them burn the town down?" one man asks Colonel Barrett. Colonel Barrett orders his troops to advance towards 100 redcoats, guarding Concord's north bridge. The Americans are about 200 feet away when the British fire at them. 2 Americans are killed and several are wounded, but this time the Americans don't run. "Fire, fellow soldiers, for God's sake, fire!" shouts an American officer. "Fire, fire, 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 fire!" The Americans along the bridge yell. Americans open fire, killing or wounding about 15 redcoats. Astonished that the colonists have fought back and seeing more Americans pouring into Concord, the whole British force begins retreating toward Boston. But the Americans aren't finished. They pursue the redcoats, shooting at them from behind trees and stone walls. News of the American defeat at Lexington has spread, and militia units pour in from far and wide seeking revenge. It seems as if men came down from the clouds, a British survivor later writes. About 3,600 patriots from 40 towns joined the fight, turning the road into a 20-mile-long battlefield. Near Lexington, a group of Americans with a special score to settle, Captain John Parker and his remaining men lie in wait. One of them takes aim at the British leader, Lieutenant Colonel Smith, and wounds him. Some of the fiercest fighting occurs at the town of Minnetomi. There, a group of redcoats rushes 78-year-old Samuel Whitmore as he fires at them from behind a stone wall. Whitmore brings down 3 redcoats before the British shoot him in the head and stab him 13 times with bayonets. Amazingly, he survives and lives to the age of 96. April 19th, 1775, 7 p.m. The British finally limp into the Boston area. They have suffered a devastating defeat. Nearly 300 redcoats have been killed or wounded. The colonists have suffered about 100 casualties at the running Battle of Concord, the first American triumph of the Revolutionary War. The battles of Lexington and Concord did more than begin the Revolutionary War. They showed England and the rest of the world that Americans would fight for their freedom. The battles were also bloody reminders the achieving independence would cost many lives. Winning the war took 8 years. Finally, on September 3, 1783, the United States and Britain signed the Treaty of Paris. Britain recognized the independence of the United States, ending the war that had begun one spring morning at Lexington and Concord.